Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome in for another episode of the Lions Grid. I'm your host, Kevin Marheine. Today, of course, the day that the Detroit Lions will be kicking off their NFC North campaign, taking on the rival Green Bay Packers here tonight on Monday Night Football. A lot of hype about it last week. We've been talking about it quite a bit here on the Lions Grid, and really the day has arrived. So, unfortunately, as of checking the Twitters of the two teams just a moment ago, I don't believe the official injury reports are in yet. I do know that Hand has been officially ruled out of the game for the Lions, and Hawkinson has cleared the concussion protocol, so he's officially, I believe, a go here for tonight. But again, Deshaun Hand's still out with that elbow. But again, teams haven't released their official inactives for tonight, and haven't seen really anything from the Packers side of things. But I believe Devontae Adams should be sitting this game out for the Packers. So. Some injuries on both sides. Of course, the Lions having the benefit coming off the bye week, an extra week not only to prepare, but an extra week to get healthy. Really important because Matt Stafford, of course, aggravated that hip injury that he's been sort of dealing with, and it given him that extra week to recover before this big game against the Packers should be beneficial for the Lions, and hopefully he can avoid any lingering issues moving forward. Because as we've talked about, the downside to having the bye week this early in the season for the Lions is just the fact that they now have to play 12 consecutive games to end their 2019 campaign. So it's great that before this important game on Monday night, they have a chance to focus in and get healthy. But it does, there is a downside to having the bye week so early in the season, and that being that you do have to play so many consecutive games without a break. So we'll have to see how it goes. Hopefully, as I've talked about, the big thing for me that I want to see is the Lions take advantage of the fact that they do have that extra week to prepare for the Packers. If they come out and they just don't look sharp and they don't look like they're executing on a game plan, it's going to be really disappointing because they've had this extra time to get prepared for this game, and it's the last couple of weeks we've heard about how Matt Patricia and the Detroit Lions sort of set the blueprint for how to beat Kansas City. It's so. At least defensively, Matt Patricia around the league is getting that sort of credit for being someone who can have a really good defensive scheme. So heading here against the Packers, that was, of course, against the Chiefs. I want to see him having that extra week preparing something here because I do think the Packers are vulnerable. And before we hop in and go any further, I'll just remind you of our picks for this week. So Joe, of course, going with the Lions in this matchup. I am going with the Packers. They are the favorite in the game, and I've never hid the fact that I am, in fact, a Packers fan. I know it's kind of weird, a Packers fan hosting a Lions themed YouTube channel, but it's what it is. I've certainly grown in my appreciation for the Lions, and really it's the best of both worlds for me. It's kind of like when I was younger. I've been born in Michigan. We lived out in Colorado for a brief period, and at that time it was during the height of like the Red Wings and Avalanche rivalry, and I was already a fan of the Red Wings. We moved out to Colorado. I started to really enjoy the Avalanche, and so as they were going up head to head, it's kind of sacrilegious, I get, for most people. It's like being a fan of both Michigan and Ohio State, or the Yankees and the Red Sox. They're supposed to be, not mixed, but I quite frankly like it. That way, it just, regardless of what happens in the game, you sort of enjoy the rivalry with both teams playing at their best, and I think that's what we're going to get here tonight on Monday Night Football. I think the Lions have played really, really good football so far this season. The Packers, of course, sitting there at 4-1, have also played good football. I'm really excited for the game tonight. I think you're going to see some good things happening out of both teams. Of course, like I said, I think the Packers, and it's not just me saying that they are the odds-on favorite. There are a lot of people around the media taking the Packers in this game. They are the favorite. Detroit is the underdog in this game. I don't think that doesn't mean that the Lions can't win the game, but certainly it's one of those things where if I'm, especially for pick'em, I'm trying to pick the winner of the game. It's not who I like to win the game, it's who I would think has the best chance of winning the game is the probabilities we're playing at there. So I think the Packers certainly have the best chance. They are right now the number one team in the NFC North, and the nice thing is when we do our recap video tomorrow, we'll be able to tie that into our Kings of the North series, because this particular game certainly going to shape up that NFC North race. Again, if the Packers do get a win tonight, they'll jump out to a 3-0 lead in terms of their divisional play. They'll have beaten the Vikings, the Bears, and the Lions at that point, going 3-0 in their first of their 6 NFC North games. Of course, this is the first NFC North matchup for the Lions. They will be taking on the Vikings next week. But this is a big game for them because, as me and Joe have pointed out several times on the program, really how you play against your divisional rivals is important, because you play 6 overall games, 2 against each team, and that's a big chunk of your schedule. So it's important to take care of these games. Obviously, it's important to take care of the non-division games as well, because there's 10 of those compared to 6 in the division. But if you take care of business against these teams that you'll be seeing in your division, it certainly helps you out, not only from a wild card not only from a divisional perspective, but also from a wild card perspective. Because right now the NFC North certainly seems like a division that could potentially send 2 teams to the play, or 3 teams, sorry, 2 teams as wild card teams to the playoffs this year. So going to be very interesting to see how things unfold here on Monday night, because yeah, I think both teams are really good. I think the important thing for the Lions, the key for them to be successful in this game, is to avoid 3rd and long situations. You look at the Smiths, as they're being called, Zadarius and Preston Smith. They were brought in for Green Bay. They have like 10.5 sacks between the 2 of them, and a big part of that is when teams fall behind and they're in those 3rd and long situations, they're able to really pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. And so if you're the Lions, you want to avoid that situation. You don't want to put them in a situation where those 2 are going to be coming after Stafford, because really it hasn't been as much of an issue since the first week when Taylor Decker really struggled. But certainly the outside pass rush does seem to be something that we've known that the Lions have struggled with at a point this season. So those are 2 very good guys at getting after quarterbacks. Like I said, they have 10.5 sacks between the 2 of them on the season. You don't want to put yourself in a bad situation and let them just run all over you. And then the other important thing is going to be running the ball. I think, getting Kerryon Johnson involved early and often. The Packers have shown that they have been susceptible to the running game, especially up the middle. It was a couple of weeks ago when the Eagles were able to have some success there with Jordan Howard. So I think that's an opportunity. And of course, even in the secondary, if they can give Stafford the time he needs to diagnose and find the open receivers, they are kind of beat up in their secondary as well. They have 2 guys who are questionable, Darryl Savage and Kevin King. Again, unfortunately, the injury report isn't in yet, so unsure if they will be in that game or not. But they're even those 2 questionable. There's also Adrian Amos, Tony Brown, and Willie Redmond, who were all on the injury report last week. So that Packers secondary is vulnerable. They are beaten up. They will have the guys out there, but certainly an opportunity. Dak Prescott, despite throwing several interceptions, did have some success against them through the air. He threw for like 463 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game between the Cowboys and the Packers. So obviously, I think a key for any team is not to turn over the ball, so Stafford can have that type of success through the air and avoid turnovers. Certainly a recipe success there for the Lions. But again, I think the big thing is avoiding those 3rd and long situations where it's an obvious passing down, because I think the Packers are very good at getting after quarterbacks, and that's kind of how they forced Dak Prescott into making those mistakes, putting pressure on him and making him make some bad decisions with the ball. But if you look at the QB matchup, Stafford ranks currently 8th in the NFL with a QB rating of 102.6. You compare that to Aaron Rodgers, who I want to say is tied for like 22nd or something like that, just behind Case Keenum. it's kind of surprising because obviously when you think of like the elite quarterbacks in the league, Aaron Rodgers is certainly a guy that a lot of people like to throw out there. But so far, statistically, Matt Stafford is having a very good season. So if they can give him the time, I think what we've seen out of Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones and this receiving core that the Lions have, they can be successful. Again, I would like to see Kerryon Johnson get a part of that, but there's certainly a recipe for success there for the Lions. It isn't inconceivable to think they go into Lambeau and get a win, especially because in the last 2 seasons, they've won both games at Lambeau. We've pointed out a couple times on the show, since doing the Lions grid, the Lions are actually 4-0 against Green Bay in that time span. So they're going for 5-0. Of course, it's Monday Night Football, so it's a prime time event. Eyes of the nation will be on them, but a lot of pressure. Again, I think it's pressure from a lot of different angles. It's a Monday Night Football game. It's your first NFC North game. You're playing a division rival. Both teams playing very well. You're coming off a bye, so there's an expectation that you're going to dial things up. You don't want to let the Packers get out to that 3-0 lead. You got to keep pace with the Vikings. There's a whole lot of things going on there. Certainly a lot of different storylines mashing up here into tonight's game. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because, again, you look at the Lions games this season. Of course, they're 2-1-1 on the season. Wins against Kansas City and against the Eagles. Or sorry, not against the Chargers and the Eagles. A close loss there to Kansas City. And then, of course, the tie week 1 with the Arizona Cardinals. Certainly looking back at that Cardinals game, definitely a missed opportunity there. If you have an opportunity, you're coming off the bye week here again, which is an opportunity. You've had that extra week to prepare. I think it's important for the Lions not to miss out on another opportunity and sort of capitalize on that this game with the extra week to prepare and sort of give the Packers their best shot. You had an extra week not only to game plan but to get healthy. If you're going to beat the Packers this season, this may be your best opportunity to do it. So go out there and do it. Again, unfortunately, until they win, I am going with the Packers in this one. You can say it's a little biased on my side as I am a Packers fan, but I do think the Packers have shown that they are one of the best teams, in the NFL. A lot of people, including myself and Joe, have them in their top 5 for their power rankings for a reason. They took care of business against Dallas last week. Packers are very good, but that does not mean they aren't beatable. So, really, I think all that's left to do is to tune in tonight to watch this Monday Night Football game and see these two old rivals square off. That's going to do it for today's show. If you did enjoy the show, please do help the channel grow. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We have a goal of reaching 100 subscribers so we can get our custom URL for the channel. We're making great progress there, but still ways to go. So if you haven't done so yet, we do encourage you to subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to support us as we continue to make Lions-themed content here on the Lions Grid. We will be back again tomorrow with a mashup video that will feature our recap from tonight's game along with our standard Kings in the North episode, and we'll sort of fuse those two together because obviously the impact or the outcome of this Lions-Packers game is certainly going to impact the standings in the NFC North, which is what our Kings in the North episode is all about. So if you want to see how this all ties in, how the outcome of tonight's game ties into that bigger NFC North picture, I certainly encourage you to tune in tomorrow where we'll take a look at that. Until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. We'll catch you during the next video.